When you're scrolling through those glossy gaming PC listings, have you ever felt that twinge of doubt? You see the flashy renderings, the promise of unparalleled graphics and blazing fast processing, but then you wonder, will this machine actually live up to the hype when I sit down after a long day, fire it up, and try to squeeze every last frame out of my favorite titles? That hesitation is real, and it's why I'm diving into the MSI Aegis RS2 AI today so you can decide if it's the right fit before you hit add to cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the core of any gaming rig, the CPU and GPU combo. The Aegis RS2 ships with an Intel Core Ultra 7270K Plus and an NVIDIA Geforce RTX 5060 Ti. On paper, that sounds like a sweet spot for 1080p to 1440p gaming, and it does deliver decent frame rates in titles like Valorant and Shadow of the Tomb Raider when I ran them at high settings. What matters in a real-world scenario, though, is how consistent those numbers stay when you're running background apps, Discord, a web browser, maybe a streaming capture tool. In my testing, the RTX 5060 Ti kept the GPU clock relatively stable, dropping only a few % under load, which meant no sudden stutter when I switched weapons in Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2. If you're the type of gamer who likes to stream while you play, you'll appreciate that the CPU doesn't throttle aggressively. The Ultra 7's Plus boost seems to stay within a comfortable thermal envelope thanks to the case's cooling design. Speaking of cooling, the Aegis RS2 uses MSI's optimal cooling system, a mix of dual fan intake and exhaust paired with a sizable heatsink. In a small 22-inch gaming cave, that system was surprisingly quiet, around 30 dB at idle, nudging up to 45 dB under full load, but never crossing the threshold where you can hear the fans over a fast-paced shooter. The real benefit shows up during marathon sessions. After 2 hours of Elden Ring at max settings, the temps settled in the low 70s Celsius range. That's well below the thermal throttling point, so you can push the machine a bit longer without worrying about performance dips. If you're an occasional gamer who only drops in for a quick match, you might not notice the difference, but for the dedicated player who pushes for high scores or long raids, that thermal stability is a real plus. Now let's discuss storage. The spec sheet mentions a 2TB M.2 SSD, but what you actually get is a single 2TB NVMe drive. That's a lot of space for a pre-built system, and it translates into practically instant load times. I timed the initial launch of Cyberpunk 2077. It opened in just under 3 seconds, far quicker than the 7 to 10 seconds I'm used to on older SATA drives. The instantaneous storage claim isn't just marketing fluff. You'll feel the difference when you're switching between games or loading large maps. The downside? The drive is not user replaceable without opening the case, and MSI doesn't provide an easy tool-free access panel. If you like to upgrade storage yourself, you'll need to factor in a bit of extra time and a screwdriver. Memory is another area where the Aegis RS2 leans into the modern era, 32 GB of DDR5, running at 5600 MHz. For most gamers, 16 GB is already more than enough, but the extra headroom becomes noticeable when you run multiple memory-intensive applications. I had a few instances where I ran a game, a browser with dozens of tabs, and a voice chat app simultaneously. The system never lagged, and the frame drop was negligible. That superior memory performance translates to smoother multitasking, especially if you plan to use the PC as a workstation for video editing or 3D rendering in addition to gaming. One practical consideration most reviewers gloss over is the size and expandability of the chassis. The RS2 sits in a mid-tower case that's deliberately compact, around 18 inches tall. It fits nicely under a standard desk, but the trade-off is limited space for extra drive bays and expansion cards. If you're thinking about adding a secondary SSD or a dedicated capture card later, you'll need to double-check the internal layout to make sure there's room. The good news is that the power supply is a 750W unit, which is more than sufficient for the current components and any modest upgrades you might contemplate. Who should buy this machine? If you're a gamer who wants a turnkey solution, no need to handpick a motherboard, CPU, and GPU, this rig hits the sweet spot. It's also ideal for creators who dabble in streaming or light content production, thanks to the 32 GB of DDR5 and the sizable SSD. The price point, while not cheap, lands in the mid-range bracket for pre-built gaming PCs, and the performance you get is consistent with that tier. On the other hand, if you're a hardcore overclocker, an enthusiast who likes to swap out cooling loops or swap graphics cards every 6 months, the RS2's relatively closed chassis and the non-user replaceable SSD might feel restrictive.